So one of the things that you also can talk about is kind of what's called buying an interest versus buying the assets of a practice. It has a big difference. It has a big difference from the seller versus selling an interest versus selling the assets. And so one of the big difference, buying an interest is better for the seller. So when we say buying an interest, it means I got a practice and I'm going to keep the practice name. They're going to keep the company, but I might sell some of the stock to somebody. I might sell 50% of that and bring in a partner. I might sell 100% of that. And so that's what's called like buying an interest versus buying the assets. What that really means is I'm someone who wants a vet that wants to own a practice. I see what I want to own. What I'll do is I'll take everything out of there. I'll just pretty much scoop it out, put it in my own company, and it's my own brand new company. So I'll own it. I'll create an LLC. And I'll have this company, it'll be my own practice. I won't buy the stock or I won't be using the old company entity. And so buying an interest is typically better for the seller, and it's for tax purposes. When you're selling stock, for instance, or you're selling an interest in a company, you get to use these favorable capital gain rates. So the highest tax rates now are up to 37% plus state, so you can be almost at 50%. And so when you're actually selling a piece of a practice, you actually get to use the real favorable capital gain rates of around 15%. Much more interesting for seller. Now versus buying an assets for the buyer. So you're buying the equipment, I'm buying the client list. And so what's really good for that from the buyer's side is that I get to depreciate all that equipment again. I get these big upfront deductions which can help me generate cash flow as I'm trying to start my practice up getting it going. And so there's these offsetting ways that sellers and buyers want to look at. There's also some legal ramifications versus selling an interest too, because if I'm a practice owner and I buy into a practice and I'm buying into it, I'm not starting my own. Legally, you're actually buying into all the liabilities that practice has ever had. And so there's some, when you're starting your own practice and you're starting your own, maybe you form your own LLC, you're kind of starting over. And a lot of attorneys will say that's the way to go to kind of minimize your liability versus buying into a practice. And so it's just something to think about when you're buying a practice. And then also the other thing is allocation of purchase price on assets and the sale is important. You see this as I'll explain what that means, but this is a negotiating tactic when you're going through this process. And so I'm looking to buy a practice, I'm looking to allocate more of the purchase price towards the equipment in that practice, because the more I can allocate, the more I can depreciate that equipment and the more upfront deductions I can get. Versus if you're looking to a seller, you might be trying to allocate more of that purchase price to like goodwill, to the client lists, all that stuff, because that actually qualifies you for the better tax treatment, and so you can reduce your taxes. And so both these ways have different ways of reducing your taxes, and it's kind of up to both sides, and that's part of the negotiation. The purchase price is the tax treatment of the practice and how these things are going to be treated.